There once was a man from Nantucket who kept all his cash in a bucket, but his daughter named Nan ran away with a man. And as for the bucket, Nantucket.
Daddy wasn't finding a bow wow. Daddy wasn't finding a bow wow. I love my little cat. I'm very fond of that. I'd rather have a big bow wow 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 wow. Daddy wasn't finding a bow wow.
Hello, and welcome to the Mochiverse, where, if you're very good, you might get to hear my dad almost tell a dirty joke.
Almost.
Hey, folks, we're back again. We thought today we would keep on this train of doing little, what would you call those? Exposés or little deepish dives, little shallow dives?
Yeah, deep dives into the dark side of nursery rhymes this time.
Yes, nursery rhymes. This is cool. Everybody knows nursery rhymes. We all have our favorite ones, but I think a lot of times we don't think about where they might have come from, why we say them and what they used to be like. And this is another really cool thing, just like with our fairy tales and just like with our common sayings, where once you start looking into it, there's a whole bunch of information that kind of leaves you with more questions than you started with. But at the same time, it's kind of satisfying because you end up learning a few things about history. You end up learning a few things about people. And I don't know. I think it's kind of cool. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's amazing. Nursery rhymes were usually originally used in early childhood development. Some were used to teach lessons. Some were used to keep the attention of the kids. Varied reasons. They've been around since what, the 1700s, I guess.
Oh, I imagine
Yeah,
so.
it would help the kids form basic foundational reading skills.
Mhm.
Because in a way they're a little bit tricky, not like a limerick, but enough to engage the kids. It's like when you watch nowadays, we have Sesame Street and stuff like that,
I love this.
where
Nowadays, we have Sesame Street. Sesame Street's been around since before I was born, right?
heck, when you were a baby, we watched Sesame Street and Zoom and whatever the heck they were, the learning company.
Oh,
And
yeah. The electric company was
anyway,
late.
yeah, and some of the lessons they had were pretty cool. But these were so the foundation. These were kind of where things started in a way to help kids understand things going on around them.
Mhm.
So most of these nursery rhymes, they're interesting, but the origins are creepy or just plain awful.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Some of them, it
yeah.
makes you think about what life must have been like for little kids if the adults were sort of going what they were going through. And I mean, Mr. Rogers, it took until like the 60s and 70s for Mr. Rogers to make a point to adults that, kids are here and they're watching you. So you might want to include them in the conversation a little bit. And so, because they're just going to make their own interpretations otherwise. And I think it's
Yeah.
funny that some nursery rhymes have evolved, like the playground songs, which we could do another episode of. Playground songs are kind of like nursery rhymes, but the ones that the kids made that touch on some incredibly dark subjects. I mean, most of the subjects that playground songs talk about are like, death, sex, and well, death, mostly death and sex.
Right.
Which is like because the kids had to figure something out some kind of way. But the nursery rhymes, you can see that touched on too. And it just seems really funny to me that like once we start talking about these, it'll be even funnier, hopefully, to people when you hear about the origins of one of them in particular. Thinking about kids singing that and what it was really kind of about. I don't know, it's very tickling to me.
Yeah, I think it sort of kicks it off with Baba Black Sheep, right?
Yep.
And who wouldn't? Well, we use it to soothe the babies to sleep. It's an old rhyme about sheep.
Yes.
But if you knew the origin, you probably wouldn't think it was so cool.
Right. Isn't it referring to serfdom, basically?
Yeah. King Edward had a wool tax, and he received 1/3 of the profits per sack that's what he got So in other words, if you have 3 bags of wool, that meant one of those were for the king.
Hmm.
You know, that's where Baba Black Sheep came from. It's the
Right.
kids would sing that song.
One for the master, one for the dame. And so, like, how come the little boy who lives down the lane gets some? Is he just like special?
Special is special, yeah.
Oh, maybe he's the illegitimate son of the king.
Yeah, well, he might have got the black sheep wool. Yeah.
Right, right. And I was looking at references to that because like we know that there's a reference in our history to like being the black sheep, right? Supposed to be a negative connotation, like if you're the
Yeah.
black sheep of a family.
Family. Yep.
But there's arguments online, of course, like there always are. Is black wool better or worse, right? And some would say that it's worse because it's like black wool and you can only do so much with it. It can only be dark. You can dye it, but you can't really dye it too many colors except for dark. But then the other side of that is that you don't have to dye it and you've already got black wool. So
Yeah, well, you think about it. I don't think you could I don't think you could dye it. What could you dye it any color? What, white? Yeah.
yeah, right. I suppose the only thing you could do is make it darker because
Yeah.
So I guess so does that mean it's more valuable because you don't have to spend any money to dye it? Because, back in those times, dyeing wool involved really arduous processes. It wasn't about like putting some RIT dye in a tub there. It was about like using usually plants and herbs, sometimes urine, most of the time urine. Urine was very used, but with black wool, I guess you didn't really have to do that. So very interesting. And we should probably research why that turned into somebody being the black sheep of the family. Maybe it has to do with sheep, not wool. Who knows?
Could be. And the black sheep wool was actually it was less lucrative because where it couldn't be dyed. If you think about it, if the white wool can be dyed just about any color, that gives you a great variety of things to do with it. So it makes it more valuable.
That's true.
So I would think that the black wool, because it's simply black, you couldn't do anything about make it black, because it's already black. Where the white wool, like I just said, could be any color you want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
So it would make it less lucrative because you couldn't really do anything with it.
I guess it depends on what you're looking for.
That's right.
If you're trying to save money on other materials and labor, that could be a good thing for you to have black wool. And if you're trying to have enough of a variety in your business to appeal to more customers than just, I don't know, mourners.
Mhm. Yeah.
Back in the day, which is what you wore black for. I guess it depended on what you wanted,
Yeah. And I'm sure there wasn't goth back then. Oh, there was, but in a different way.
Yeah, there were totally listen, there's always been goths, but well, number one, goth was a different thing back then. That was an actual like group of people.
Mm.
But the goths that we think of now, yeah, they were always there. They were just, in the shadows, writing in their diaries.
Yeah. All right, so that was pretty quick.
Oh yeah.
yeah.
I did a little bit of scant research, just kind of looking up, see if there were any other ideas for the Baba Black Sheep, and it was really funny that Wikipedia got really like sarcastic bitchy in its entry. It says, and I'm quoting from Wikipedia, as with many nursery rhymes, attempts have been made to find origins and meanings for the rhyme, most of which have no corroborating evidence. I'm like, wow, Wikipedia, calm down. You don't have to be so nasty.
Yeah.
And then another interesting tidbit that I found was that in 1951, together with the song "In the Mood," which I'm sure everybody knows what that song is, right? You know that song, right, Dad?
Mm-hmm.
So that song and Baba Black Sheep were the first songs to ever be digitally recorded on a computer.
How about that, sports fan?
I know, right? We're just a wealth of knowledge here on the Mochiverse. Okay, which one's next?
The next one's just 3 Men in a Tub.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, it's I guess it was originally a rhyme about sexual entertainment. It started off with 3 maids in a tub. And the popular attraction was that people would it was like a peep show, traveling fairs, where people could watch them and then enjoy each other's company. I guess is the early porno. I guess
Well, I'm pretty sure that most people are picturing Jello wrestling or mud wrestling.
Yeah.
And I mean, they know that's been an enduring thing. Gosh, we watch a lot of older movies, and for some reason, the movie Stripes keeps coming up on our watch list. It just kind of shows up at 3 a.m. on Tubi.
Mhm.
And there's a mud wrestling scene in Stripes, and it's like in a bar. You just, go to a bar on
Mhm.
base, and there's just like mud wrestling ladies.
Yeah, yeah. And it's amazing. It started out that way. I guess it was considered it was a limerick. And then later on, the Victorians decided to try to clean it up by making it 3 men in a tub.
Hmm.
What they didn't know was that 3 men could have just as good a time in a tub as,
Yeah, they sure can.
yes.
And I read about the rub-a-dub-dub part of the rhyme. Some people were saying that it was a version of like tisk tisk, sort of like saying, "What are you doing?
Right.
Shame, shame, shame. You're watching ladies sort of writhe around in a tub." I don't know if you found any information, but I didn't find too much information on the professions part of it, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker. I think maybe that just means that all of these dudes in the town are
Yeah,
coming to enjoy the show, or did it just
yeah,
kind of because it's rhymey?
yeah. I think there was one around 1830. There was another one of the times that it was another attempt at removing the maids from the thing. It was rub a dub tub, 3 fools in a tub.
Uh,
And who do you think they be? The butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker. Turned them out, names all 3. So I think maybe that came. They just try to figure something that rhymed to add
right.
to the limerick.
And they gave a completely different theme to that story by changing it up, like who are these fools? Basically, what they're saying is there's 3 dudes who are drunk, because I'm sure that fools in this sense refers to like these guys are drunk, and look at them. Look, they got the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker. They're drunk. They're hanging out together. They're sitting in a tub. What are you doing? Get out. Get them out of my bar or whatever. Get them out of my tub. Like whose tub is this?
Yeah, the way tubs were back in those days, where they didn't really change the water.
No, no, people would. I read a little tidbit months ago about why most weddings were in May or June, because I think people used to take their yearly bath in like May, and so by June they still were smelling kind of okay.
Okay,
So it was a good idea to have a wedding in June, I guess, before it got too hot and sweaty too.
wow.
Yeah, that's pretty appetizing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm thinking gnarly, but that's
Gnarly. Yeah, gnarly's good.
yeah.
Yeah, I also saw interestingly a reference to Boston when I was reading about the 3 maids or men in a tub. They were referring, of course, to the peep shows and the fairs, but they were talking about Boston, which kind of made me giggle. Like, can you imagine going to the Topsfield Fair and paying a dime or whatever to like look at naked ladies wrestling in a tub, like right after you go and look at the world's smallest horse,
Yeah.
which which by the way is just a miniature horse. It's like the same horses you have like in your town, the ones that are seeing eye horses with the sneakers, which is like, yeah. And I know this because I paid money to see the world's smallest horse.
There you go.
Yeah, right
That's
after I went and saw Lobster Boy, who incidentally huge asshole. Like he was, I guess, a really bad person. But sideshows had a checkered past. There were very, very awful things in the history of sideshows, which that would be another interesting episode, I think. But yeah, I guess for some it was a living. So there's that.
was the next one. Ring around the Rosie.
Ring Around the Rosie, that old chestnut. That one's famous for people wanting to attribute so much meaning to.
Yeah, I think it was originally generated during the Great Plague of 1665, where people had during the plague they got this rash that was a red ring rash around them. I'm not sure where it was, and to hide the smell, people would carry flowers because some people believed that it was traveling through bad smells, which actually has that's a pretty good theory.
That was the miasma theory. So there's a few things about that. And I think this has been pretty much universally debunked. But it is interesting to talk about. First thing is that plague, which happened a very long time ago, and it went over the course of many years. There isn't actually a red ring rash associated with the plague. The plague that most people are talking about is the bubonic plague, and it's named after these like sort of cyst-like, this is really gorgeous stuff to talk about, but like these like cyst-like things pustules. They were called buboes, and they were really big actually. And they were all over, but they were mostly in like the armpits and the groin and places where you would have, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, you lost me there.
Lymph nodes. So the buboes would be sort of anywhere around you had your lymph nodes, right? So it would be the armpits and the groin, and they would be really super painful. They would also be like full of disgusting pus, and they would be smelly. People did carry around little sprigs of flowers. They put them in their houses to try and ward off the smell, because again, there was the miasma theory of disease, which people thought that diseases were carried by bad smells. They didn't know anything about, there was no germ theory yet, so they didn't know anything about bacteria, viruses, any of that. So there is part of that. The only problem with that is the rhyme itself, from what I can research and from what like lots of people have researched, doesn't extend back that far. So it's much later.
Much later, I think around the 1800s. And there are some obvious that would argue that it's just a nursery rhyme. And it was published more than 200 years after the Great Plague.
Right, right. It was most prevalent in like the 1800s. I saw references from the 1700s in Germany with similar rhymes that were really just talking about dancing around like flower bushes, So I think it's more about that.
Yeah, it's just probably just a sweet song for children to sing. But there's the other side of it, is maybe the interpretation is to consider metafolklore, which is interpreting folklore.
That's correct. And sort of like the schoolyard rhymes, I think that's where Ring Around the Rosie really evolved. Because again, children trying to make sense of the world around them did make a lot of little rhymes about diseases and death. And and Ring Around the Rosie is also associated with a game, sort of like that game you used to play with the chairs.
Yeah, you dance
where you dance around, and then the music stops and you have to like all. And I think Ring Around the Rosie used to be a game like that too, where you'd sort of like go around in a circle and then you'd stop and everybody fell down.
Right. Yeah, and then you'd have a penalty, like you'd have to hug or kiss another child or something.
Yes, which is
and then
horrid.
And then that child takes a place in the middle of the ring, and everybody dances around.
Yeah, ring around
Ring around Rosie,
Stevie,
or Jacqueline, or
ring around the Jacqueline. That's pretty good. But yeah, I think the plague thing, I think that it's really sort of just people trying to retroactively attribute meaning to something older. And there's really nothing wrong with that. And it's not something new. I mean, there's modern day examples of that. There are still people who love to sort of repeat rumors they've read on the internet because it sounds really interesting. Like how people still say that, like, what was that thing? They said Mr. Rogers was like a Marine or something.
Yeah.
It totally wasn't. He was a pastor before he had his television show. So, but people love to say things like that.
Yeah, it's the old telephone game or teleperson game. You get the line of people and you tell the first person something. By the time it gets to the last person, it's changed. And someone puts their own twist to it. I think we were talking about in a previous episode, one that we saw that in The Little Mermaid, that she sewed her legs together. It's just like, seriously, if you read the Hans Christian Andersen's story, you said that there's nothing like that in there.
Nothing like that in there. But if you see enough people on the internet drawing that picture,
right,
you're like, oh yeah, that
real.
I think that was in the original story, wasn't it?
Yeah. Was it? You throw enough mud on the wall, something's bound to stick.
Yes, and it's also the Mandela effect, like the Luke, I'm your father, that people still insist, or the Berenstein Bears, which people say, no, it used to be spelled Berenstein, not Berenstain. I know it because I had those books. And I just, I'm interested in those kind of discussions because some people think it proves that we're either living in a simulation or there are alternate universes, because all these people insisting that they had the Berenstein Bears books. And I remember those books and I remember them being spelled Berenstain, because when I
Mhm.
was a kid, I was like, I don't think that's how you normally spell a last name like that. Nobody believes me when I say that, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I was a weird kid. I used to have thoughts like that when I was a kid. Nobody else did, I guess. I don't know.
We all have weird thoughts when we're kids. So I think that pretty much summed it up. And they did different versions of Ring Around the Rosie. What this Round the Ring of Roses, and I think they changed that. It was Round the Ring of Roses, Pots Full of Posies. The one that stoops last shall tell whomever she loves best. They may have taken that version and twisted it around and made it Ring Around Rosies because it sounded better instead of Round the Ring of Roses.
That's interesting. That's an
Yeah.
interesting yes, and then of course the reference in some of the versions of the songs, which is Ashes, Ashes,
Right. We all fall
which
down. Yeah.
which is claimed to refer to cremation of bodies.
Yep.
But cremation wasn't always a thing, especially with the plague,
Yep.
because they used to just bury the bodies in big holes. And also, I mean, if you could think about a time that miasma was the theory of disease. I don't want to word this in such a way that makes me sound like I burn bodies all the time, but like if you've ever smelled a burning body, I don't think that would make you think the problem had gone away if you believed in miasma theory, right? So I don't know if they
Yeah.
would have done that as much.
Yeah.
And again, I don't burn bodies or anything. I promise.
To clarify, yes. Okay.
Yeah, to clarify, I don't do much with my spare time, and I
Right.
definitely don't burn bodies.
There you go. Okay, so we move to the next one, Rockabye Baby.
Yes, Rockabye Baby.
Yeah, that's a cool one.
Yes, it always reminds
Another,
me of the Goonies.
yep. Yeah, I mean, supposedly King James II of England
Mhm.
had smuggled another man's child into the birthing chamber to assure that the throne could stay under Roman Catholic control. But despite those efforts, it failed. And other things say the lullaby is actually a ritual where stillborn babies were hung from trees in an attempt to bring them back to life.
Oof.
Yeah, I know. That's kind of there was. Yeah. This is some of the things that they could be attributed to it. There were some stories that claim that it had to do with a family of tree dwellers. It was a Kenyan.
Mhm.
They made their home out of a tree, a yew tree. Every one of the branches were made into a cradle for their babies.
Hmm.
The babies would be lulled to sleep by the movement of the tree and the wind. Apparently, that tree, the yew tree, still exists in Devonshire, England. It was,
Oh,
yeah.
well,
So,
that's interesting, I think. I think this one is another one that has an awful lot of explanations attributed to it, which tells me that nobody really knows.
mhm.
But there's a lot of troubling ones included in the explanations I found. Usually they're trying to attribute it to cultures that they're unfamiliar with. This is like mainly English people, I think, who were the great colonizers for a long time, going over to foreign lands, taking them and seeming to observe cultures, bringing back stories of how they interpreted people's cultures, which, I think both of us, when we were researching this one, we saw references to Native Americans.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, they put them in their trees to rock them to sleep. I mean, there's no evidence that they ever did that. But that would be the kind of story that you can imagine in the 14, 15, 1600s. Some white dudes would come back home and tell fascinated people these stories about what these foreigners are doing, and it would make them seem more foreign to them. It would make them seem
Yeah.
more different, and it kind of reinforces what they perceive as their superiority.
Mhm.
There's also a lot of references to pagan culture, which over the years was vilified in order to get people away from paganism and into what they felt was better, the sort of Christian way of doing things. So like, look
Mhm.
at these pagans, they're putting babies in trees. There was a ritual in like Celtic cultures, Celtic and Gaelic pagan cultures, putting a baby in a tree, and that referred to the changeling theories that they used to have. This was like attributed to fairy culture, where there was a belief that if you had a child that was failing to thrive, you had a baby and that baby was not doing well, the assumption was that fairies had come and taken your baby and replaced it with a fake baby that was like a fairy baby. So what you were supposed to do was to take that fake baby that wasn't your baby anymore and put it in the tree in the middle of the night. And if you came back and your baby was either dead or gone, then I guess the fairies didn't want to give you your child back. If you came back and your child was still alive, that meant the fairies took theirs back and gave your baby back to you, and then your baby would be fine, I guess. Just
Yeah.
seems
Something. Yeah.
to circle back to the King James theory on the rockabye baby, despite all the other stuff, sort of women used to rock babies in trees and this, that, and the other thing. I think the King James one probably serves as the most realistic reason for the rhyme, because it's very, political stuff did find its way into a lot of nursery rhymes. So we know that from Humpty Dumpty.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So King James the Second, he was the last Catholic English king, and there was I think debate is too small of a word for it. There was a lot of problems between the Catholic Church and the Protestant Church regarding the English throne for just years and years and years. There was a lot of tension about it. There was a lot of divide in the country about it. And so there was a lot of worry because, they knew that King James was about to have an heir. And I saw the story that you mentioned about sort of like he stole a baby or there was a legitimate baby, but he actually did have like an heir. And I think it fits better when you look at the actual lines of the rhyme. I mean, even it's kind of obvious, actually. It's kind of like on the nose. A treetop, of course, referring to the monarchy in the very top of the political structure in the country. So you've got this baby in the treetop, which can either refer to an actual baby, which is the heir, or you can refer to the baby of whichever religion side that you're on when you're singing the rhyme. Right.
Gotcha. Okay.
So here's the monarchy up in the treetop. Here's the baby up in the treetop, or here's our way of believing in things up in the treetop. And the winds that blow are the winds of controversy, the winds of unrest, the winds of, protest, and winds of change, not to sound too cliche. And when that wind blows, it's going to rock the structure of the monarchy. It's going to rock the structure of the ruling class of the country, which is like a serious stuff, and then those winds are going to blow harsh enough for the bow to break. And then that cradle is going to fall. They're thinking the whole monarchy is going to topple. The whole country is going to go into ruin because down comes the baby, down, cradle and all, everything's going to fall apart. So I think they were really just worried about what would happen if there was like a Catholic dynasty. And I think it's more logical that this rhyme is from the perspective of a Protestant being concerned that there would be a Catholic dynasty forever in England. That's my take. What do you think?
No, I think it makes sense because it could be that they're hoping that the heir would die so that they could convert over to Protestantism, which was a big movement at the time.
Correct.
Supposedly it was rockabye baby thing was penned in a pub as an allegory to the revolution or what was going on, just like you were saying.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense because the pubs were the places in that time that those revolutions were starting to happen. I mean, this is the places where people were gathering to sort of try and take back what they wanted, to keep. And these were like, these were really volatile times. It seems strange to think about how volatile things were back in the past during these kinds of times in these countries. We only see little glimpses of it. And this is why we get scared when something like, but when, the January 6th thing happened, that scares a lot of people because you're like, oh, we've seen this before. Right.
Yeah. And I think and the other part of this is that certainly in times, in the way we look at the church and look at any church nowadays, they were a lot different back, when the King James was in England. The priests and the cardinals and stuff like that were not necessarily the greatest people in the world.
Oh, hell no. Hell no. And the church had so much power in the past, which we might have a hard time wrapping our brains around today, mostly because when we kind of made this our country, we kind of decided collectively and wrote it down on paper, again, not to get too political, that we wouldn't do that here.
Right. Right. Yeah.
You know, maybe this will get us our first comments and emails. Who knows?
Yeah. Who knows? Is right. Yeah.
Incidentally, there's a new feature. If you happen to listen to our podcast on the site that we host from and not on some other like Spotify or YouTube or whatever, if you go directly to Buzzsprout to listen by following the QR code on the cards we gave you or just our links, there is a spot in the info section of each episode where you can leave us a comment and it's going to come through as like a little text message. That would be a great way if you're not inclined to email, which I think a lot of people aren't super inclined to email anymore, unless you have to for work. That'd be a great way to give us some feedback. I would love to see some comments in our episode show notes. So if you follow us through Buzzsprout or if there's any place where you can leave a comment, please do. We'd love to hear from you. You can give us ideas for future episodes. You can just tell us what you think. You can share your thoughts. If you are passionately angry about something, just keep in mind we're people with feelings, so no hate, please. But hey, if you have some thoughts, you can gently share them. That would be fine too.
Yeah. A couple other notes about Rockabye Baby. One is there's a Davy Crockett connection where Davy Crockett's cousin, Effie Crockett, claimed that she wrote the lyrics to the nursery rhyme as a way to, calm her fussy infant. And many people dispute her claim, but fortunately for her, she was given a lot of credit in more than 175 television shows and movies.
Right.
Somebody picks up on it, and then they just give her credit for it.
That family really likes to tell some tales, don't they?
That's right. That's right. The other one was a little comment was Mother Goose. It's a Mother Goose melody. It appeared that the nursery rhyme was a cautionary tale. It serves as a warning to the proud and ambition who climb so high that they generally fall at last.
Yes. So exactly. So don't try anything crazy, kids.
Yeah.
Just keep your feet on the ground, like Bastian's father told him in Neverending Story.
And the last one little odd thing that's not really part of the origin story, but a side note is Clara Bow, who was a silent film star. Rockabye Baby had always reminded her of a painful incident from her childhood where one of her classmates died while falling into a fire. And the boy's mother went to help it. Clara held the child in her arms while it died from his injuries. As an actress, she could cry on cue if Rockabye Baby was played because it reminded her of the terrible fire and the poor child's death. Just an interesting little side note.
It is. That's so sad. Wow. I kind of love that though.
So I'll say the last one, but here we go around the mulberry bush.
Yes, this might be one of the more obscure ones, maybe ones people don't remember as well. So maybe just a little reminder about what the heck that is.
Yeah, it seems to be it was about prison abolition.
Okay.
Apparently it's actually West Yorkshire prison. I got my words mixed again.
Yeah, you did. Jeez.
Yeah. The song commemorates the daily walks at the prison yard by the female passengers. They would dance around a mulberry bush in the yard for exercise. Yeah, another possible interpretation is that England had struggled producing silk, and silkworms eat mulberry bushes. And during the 18th century, they tried to emulate the success of the Chinese industry produces silk.
Right. So they tried to probably import mulberry bushes to England and
exactly, but their cold winters proved too harsh to be able to grow the mulberry bushes so that they could have any success in the silk production industry.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. And the lyrics that are in the Here We Go Around the Mulberry Bush, this was thought to be part of a joke about the difficulties that England had during that time. It was one little lyric was on a cold and frosty morning. So it's interesting how that all sort of ties in where these mulberry bush and came from, and some of the interpretations that came from it.
And that sounds reasonable because saying here we go again, I mean, as we know in history, England was always trying to take industry from other places. And one of the things they would try was to take it for themselves and do it. But certainly, if they couldn't do that, they would just, make the native people of that country do it in their native country for them and just take all the profits and spoils from that. So, that makes sense. Here we go again. Right.
Yeah, and it's probably, I guess you could make an argument that all the colonies that the British had, they would use products from there to supply their country with products that they couldn't produce.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And it it's a pretty dark joke, but somebody made a joke online fairly recently, because colonization, horrible stuff. The British Empire had a lot of horrible things about it, but they did sort of make a little sarcastic comment about, all of the countries, all of the nations that the English sort of raided for their spices, and yet British food is so unflavored and
Bland,
there's no
yeah.
spice in it at all.
Yeah.
Which is like, hey, listen, I defend a lot of things about England as far as culture, but I can't deny that one really. They
Yeah.
definitely specialize in more comfort foods that don't taste like a lot. And English people, you can come at me if you want. It's not really said with hatred. I do like your culture, but yeah, you can't really deny that your food isn't super. And I'm not talking about your curries and your things, because those aren't yours. Again, colonialism. Queen Victoria just really liked Indian food, and she ate it constantly, even though it really bothered her stomach. But she was a big hand in bringing all those curries to you. So that's not yours.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's interesting. The prison one is interesting too, because nursery rhymes, yes, they're for children, but they're also rhymes, which are repetitive, and repetitive rhymes do evoke sort of the image that you would see there of people walking in a prison, because exercise in a prison, in lots of prisons, was very, especially in that time, it wasn't as though you were out playing games and getting some real exercise. They literally did make you just walk in a circle because they could keep track of all of you. They didn't want you running around in different directions in a yard doing your own thing. They wanted you to be in a line, walking in a circle, rain or shine, and just do that for just like, I don't know, however long they gave them, like an hour.
Yeah.
Especially a place like West Yorkshire, which would have been like most of the year, not great weather, probably raining buckets, people just walking in a circle sort of over and over again. And I mean, female prisoners, male prisoners, it makes sense that that would be like a nursery rhyme. I'm not sure about the mulberry bush. I guess you're saying that there was like a mulberry tree in the yard, which is maybe that was a holdover from them trying to grow mulberry trees, mulberry bushes for the silk industry. Didn't quite work out, but I guess there are a few that remained.
Right. Yeah, and as I sort of think about that discipline of going around the mulberry bush and the place that in our culture that nursery rhymes have, I just had a brief thought about being in the military, how part of the discipline, and when you were marching, there would always be marching songs.
Right.
And they were really limericks, although quite honestly, probably purposely, I don't remember them. But yeah, they certainly had a place in fostering discipline, which would make sense in a prison as well in the military.
Well, having a rhythm to the exercise that you're doing does help. If you're in the military, it does help you all step at the same time.
Yeah.
Of course, you have to worry about the bouncing.
Stop your bouncing. That's right.
You're bouncing. You're bouncing.
You're bouncing. Yeah.
Yeah, but you do, I mean, and I guess it would sort of help with the dullness of, parades. I mean, like, and I'm speaking of military parades, which is what, just marching on and on and on. Might as well have a rhyme to go with it. And, I don't know if your experience was this, but of course, in the movies, they always put a couple of dirty ones in there, which I'm sure that, young guys would appreciate at the time.
Yeah. And like I said, probably on purpose, I knocked them out from my memory.
I know a couple from Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah. Yeah, it does make, because in the military, certainly it was all about discipline and working together. In the prison, it's sort of it has the same effect. It's just to keep everybody together in line.
Yes, it's easier to control a group of people if you make them all do the same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but it would be, you could argue that the reason the military does it is so that you can work as a unit,
Oh, sure.
so. All right, so that sort of gives us the ending to this episode,
Yes.
if you will,
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground, I think.
Mhm,
People should let us know what they think, and
mhm.
I know I'll be thinking about it going forward. But yeah, I think we did pretty well. There's a lot of it's really cool to see so much rich information that can be in just little things that we barely think about. I think this is like kind of where we're trending with our show.
Yeah, it's funny because you think about it, now you every time you take one of these childhood tunes, you may not look at them the same way.
Mhm.
You say, hey, you know what? They were probably about intrigue of some kind, maybe political, murder and disease and all the other things that started as the origin of these nursery rhymes.
Right.
So it's interesting in one of our initial episodes, we talked about how I had trouble saying a particular word.
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah. So all right. You say your part of it first, and then I will talk about my perspective of it as a child. Let's just go. Let's do it. You people have been waiting. We did have some feedback from one of our first episodes or our first episode. So somebody really wanted to know about cinnamon. So
Yeah, we were, I don't even know whether somebody come up in talking about adding cinnamon into something, and I said, geez, I have trouble. I just ceremonym. I'd say ceremonym, and you'd say no, that's not how you say it. I said, no, it's ceremonym. No, Dad, it's cinnamon. I said, listen, I can't say cinnamon. There's no way I could ever say that word. It's just impossible for me to say that. And you said, but you just said it. No, I didn't. How could I say that word? I can't say cinnamon. It's impossible for me. So, and that was my take on it.
that's
And
your
okay,
take.
Lynn, jump
Yeah.
in on it.
All right. So yeah, my take is first of all, I'm like 5 years old. Okay. So I want everybody to know this. That this grown man is doing this to a 5-year-old. So yeah, he's like, hey, I can't say cinnamon. I'm like, you can't? Yeah, no, I can't say cinnamon. I can't say cinnamon. Listen, cinnamon. See, I can't say cinnamon. And I'm like, yeah, but you just said cinnamon. No, like, no. I can't say cinnamon. I told you I can't say cinnamon. Listen, I'll prove it. Cinnamon. See, I can't say cinnamon. And as a 5-year-old, I lost my freaking mind. I'm like, I swear you're saying it, and then I start crying. And then I'd run to my mother. And then this grown man gaslighting a 5-year-old is like laughing his ass off. And it wasn't just once, folks. This isn't just one memory. He used to do this to me all
Yeah.
the time. So yeah, my dad can say cinnamon and I will die on that hill. He can do it.
Yeah.
So now you know.
Now we know. Yeah.
That's the story of cinnamon.
That's it. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
This my
So
childhood scarification. It's fine. It's
that's
fine.
it.
It's all fine.
Yeah.
We're fine now.
Yeah, we're fine now. Yeah. So we laugh about it
Just you wait. I'm gonna get you.
someday.
We'll see what part of you goes first. If it's your mind, I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna really get you.
The weird part, I won't even be able to know it.
It's just gonna make you say cinnamon. There's
Uh,
like that. Did you ever see the movie Flowers in the Attic?
no, I
It
don't
might
think.
not have been your demographic, but it was mine. It was based on a book, a really dark book. Basically, this was a rich family, and the woman who's the daughter of the family had gone outside her family's wishes by marrying a cousin. She had 3 beautiful children, and the family cut her off. Well, then her husband dies. So she brings the children back to their estate. The grandmother decides to take them in, but they have to live in the attic and they have to be shut away. And she won't get her inheritance, the daughter, unless they never know that the children exist. So these poor kids are like, wasting away in this attic. And they systematically try to actually kill the children by feeding them these cookies that are covered in like arsenic or whatever. And the kids figure it out and they confront the mother. Sorry, spoilers, but it's been like a lot of years. So just read the book and watch the movie. At the end, they're confronting the mother And the daughter, who was all like by this time like all gaunt and dirty, and she's like thin and she's like dying, she's got this cookie with arsenic on it and she's shoving it in her mother's face and she's saying, "Eat the cookie, mother." That kind of reminds me of that.
Okay, so few
Yeah,
little.
besides my systematic torture when I was like a small child, do you have some more torture for me?
There you go.
Okay.
Drip, 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 drip. If if you are being chased by a pack of taxidermists, do not play dead. I tried to steal spaghetti from the shop, but the female guys saw me and I couldn't get past her.
Okay.
I don't know what you call a small spillage from a pen, but I have an inkling.
Oh, all right. Yeah.
Yeah, roll your eyes on that one. My grandfather invented the cold air balloon, but it never really took off.
No.
And what do you call a reluctant potato?
I don't know.
A hesitator.
Oh, okay.
That was bad.
Yeah, that's bad. That's it.
Yeah,
That's all I
yeah,
can take.
yeah.
I can't stand no more.
Yeah, it's all I can stand. I can't stand no more. Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. All right, folks, I think we did it. That's it. And we will see you next time. Send us a message, share our podcast with everybody, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Very good. Okay. Ciao
All
for
right.
now.
Ciao for now.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Daddy wasn't finding a bow wow. Daddy wasn't finding a bow wow. I've got a little cat. I'm very fond of that. I'd rather have a big bow wow.
You scared me for a minute. Like, I'm like, wait, which podcast is this again?